Welcome back. Please remember, next week is your exam. You have the midterm next week, exactly in a week. So something that I want to do today is to talk a little bit about the proctoring for the exam. Next week, our lecture, my plan is to do a review, give you some examples of questions and the full list of topics and things that you would like to be sure to review. But for today, the proctoring environment. If you have been here the previous year, I am sure that you are familiar with this software. If not, I am going to present the software to you. But how many of you have used this software before? How many of you have took an exam with the lockdown browser? Okay, so most of you have. I have 5 not. Okay, so quickly, for you that have used the software, you know what I am going to present. But for the people that haven't used the software, let me tell you quickly. Your exam is going to be on Canvas. The first thing that you need to know is next week, we do not have a lecture on Zoom. The next week, the day of the exam, you do not need to connect to Zoom. What you need to do is exactly 4:30, go to Canvas and open your exam. Your exam is like one of the quizzes that you have done before. It's going to be Canvas, open your quiz, and you're going to have multiple choice questions and also open questions. That is going to be your exam. However, in order to access your exam, you will need a particular browser, a software that you need to install in your computers. It's a browser. That is what you're going to install. This is the browser that you need to use in order to access the exam. If you try to access the exam with your Safari, Explorer, Edge, whatever, the browser that you normally use, you're not going to be able to access. You're going to receive a message. So you need to use this particular software. Why? The software basically is going to limit your capability of open other applications or open other tabs. So theoretically, at least, the only thing that you're going to have on your computers is your exam, nothing else. Moreover, the software is going to be recording you. It's going to be recording your face, your activity, and it's going to be recording the audio. So be careful when you speak. Hopefully, it is better to be silent, but remember that the audio is being recorded also. How to get the software or how to test it. Number one, by the end of the lecture, you're going to have a link like this one. Sample exam. And you have 1 week to basically click in the link. My recommendation, if you can do it today, tomorrow, I mean, as soon as you can, please go ahead, particularly if you do not have experience with the software, click in that link. The name is sample exam because you're going to have the opportunity to take the exam used to test your systems. It's only 1 question and they have 0 value for your grade. So don't worry, you do not need to study for this. Click there and 2 options. Number 1, if you do not have the software, if it's the case that this is the first time for you using this, what is going to happen is that by clicking there, you are going to have access to the link to get the software. So step number 1, by the end of the lecture, hopefully today, tomorrow, as soon as you can, go to Canvas, check in the modules, this link, and get the software. Once you have the software, you follow the installation process as usual, then you use the software, and using the software, you access again. And when you do that, what you're going to have is something similar to this screen. Well, after you authenticate and so on, right? But you're going to have a browser, and that browser will show you kind of a very limited interface, kind of that. Probably a little bit different with the new version, but something like this. use the browser, access Canvas. And when you access, you have the opportunity, again, to access the sample exam. Now, using this software, you are not going to get this link to get the software. You are going to get access, be granted access to the exam, this exam with one question, that later you are going to have another link for the midterm, the real exam next week. What you can do is, even though this one is only one question, what I want you to do is to check all this process. Because in order to take the exam, even the sample exam, in order to answer that one question, that is the last step here, you need to accomplish step 1 to step 6. What do you need to do? Number 1, it is mandatory in order to access your exam to have a camera. Right now, no one have the camera enabled. For the exam next week, you need a camera. And you need to grant access to your camera to the software. You are going to be recorded during the exam. So mandatory, the camera. If you have any issue with the camera in your computer do not have a camera for whatever reason, you have 1 week to ask for a computer, borrow a laptop, or if you do not have a friend or someone that could give you access to a camera or to a computer with a camera, I think the library or the Fulton School is helping you with cameras. I think there are cameras available in the library or something like that. The previous year, they sent emails with that information. I think it's still available. So if you do not have a camera, or if your camera doesn't work or whatever, you have 1 week to get one, because it is mandatory. You need the camera for the exam. Good? Good question. I am going to mention that. So number 1, you need the camera. You need the camera because, well, after you agree with the license and blah, 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 the system is going to check that you have a camera. It's going to ask you for access to the camera. You should say yes, and then the system is going to be able to use your camera. And with the camera, the first thing that the system is going to do is to take a picture. It's going to take a picture of you, like right now, and then it's going to ask you to show an ID, and it's going to take a picture of your ID. Regarding the ID, the thing that I need, what you need to show to the system is one official valid ID with your name and your picture. So hopefully your ASU ID is the best option. Your ASU ID, your picture, your name, that's it. Something that I recommend you. Some of your IDs are connected with this bank account. Some of your IDs have your name, your picture, but also a bank account number or something in the front. My recommendation, cover those numbers. You do not want bank account information in some place in the cloud. So the only thing that we need, your name, your picture. Now, if for any reason you do not have the ASU ID, you can use a driver license, a passport, any official valid ID. I think ASU ID, passport, or driver license, I think with those 3, we cover all the possibilities, right? I mean, so far, you should have one of those 3, hopefully. So any of those 3, when the system asks for your ID, show the ID, it's going to take a picture. Again, if there is any information there that you want to cover, it is okay. We only need your name and your picture. So the driver license, the passport, the ASU ID, picture and name, that is good enough. picture of you, picture of your IDs. Then the system is going to give you information. I am giving you this information also in a link on Canvas, in a document. In fact, I am giving you more than what you're going to have here, more and in another document, so you can read the document and read all the different things that you need to know before the exam outside of the software. I am going to talk more about that document in the next slide, but well, you're going to receive instructions. The most important thing with the instructions that I want to mention right now, the system is going to ask you to show your environment. Show your environment. The system is going to ask you to show your room. So something that I recommend you to do is think about in which place you are going to take the exam. You're going to be able to take your exam in your apartment. Your roommates are going to allow you time and space to take the exam without any interruption. Something that is important, you do not want someone else in the room with you. You do not want to be talking during the exam, because those kind of things are going to be flagged as suspicious, and someone is going to review the video and the situation and your exam and so on. Honestly, you do not want to be flagged and receive all the questions about what happened. So if you can think about a place in which you can be alone, or at least a quiet environment, take your exam without interruptions, that could be great. The environment check is going to ask for your room, also for your desktop. During the check, you need to show the space in which you are working. Basically to show that you do not have any notes or book or the cell phone or things like that. My recommendation, an empty space. Remember, you cannot use anything during the exam. The exam is closed book. So again, just to avoid any possible problem, if you can have an empty space, an empty desk or an empty table, that could be great. My best recommendation. Now, something that you can use, and I am going to put this in the next slide, you can use paper. Some people ask me about paper to draw diagrams or take notes or just think in paper. You can use paper. The only thing that I need to ask you is, when you are asked for the environment check, please show your sheets to the camera and be sure to show that they are empty, that they do not have anything there. Do not use recycled paper. Do not use any paper that has something printed or that you used to write something before. Empty paper, something that is clean and you show to the camera, you put in your desk, you can use that paper during the exam. That is fine. So your environment, your desk, no one in the room with you, or at least no interaction with that people. And some people use iPhones to listen music or something. Please do not do that. It's something that is going to be in the document that I am going to share with you, but anything that you have in your ears is going to be flagged as suspicious, because again, the system is going to think that you are talking with someone using the headphones and getting the answers. That is what the system is going to think. And we're going to review the video and so on. So nothing in your ears, do not cover your face, do not use any hat. In fact, my recommendation, some people talk during the exam, some people is speaking aloud, reading the questions or reading the answers. Please do not do that, because again, the system is going to think that you are sharing the question with someone else in the room and waiting for an answer. So if you do not speak, better. But if you speak for any reason, just remember that even though you are in your apartment or with your friends or whatever, you are being recorded. not only your face, but the audio. Be careful with what you said. We have students recorded talking about the TAs, the instructor, and other things. Academic integrity in the video with the audio. Be careful with that. It's very easy to forget that you have a camera and a microphone. Remember. Anyway, these are the steps. This is the process. Important things. This document is going to be on Canvas by the end of the lecture. Please read the document. I am just giving you a summary of the things that I consider are the most important, a summary of things that in the past happened, but the document covers more than that. It's a 2 pages, 3 pages document, depending on the font that you use, that basically cover all the recommendations for online proctoring, for doing your exam online. Important, the exam is during the lecture time. As I mentioned before, in a week, you do not open Zoom. I am not going to be here for the lecture. I am going to be connected and reading your emails. If someone have a problem, you can send me an email. The TAs are going to be also available, checking the email just in case that something happened, but we do not have a lecture. Starting at 4:30, the exam is available. You can go to Canvas using the browser and you are able to start. My plan is that you're going to have 15 minutes for all this process that I described before. Again, you can complete this in 5 minutes, but worst case scenario, if something fails, if you need to restart, if the camera is not being recognized, I don't know. Several things that could happen if you didn't test before. I think 15 minutes could be good enough. My plan for the exam is 60 minutes. You can finish your exam in 60 minutes. In particular, more or less, the average is that the exam have 20 questions. Is the average. Depending on your exam, you can have a little bit more or less, but around 20 questions. So the average is like 3 minutes per question. Usually the people finish before 1 hour. I have students that finish in 20 minutes, 25 minutes. That is more or less when the people start submitting the exams and finishing. So you can finish really fast. But you have an hour. So you can go back and forward in your questions. The exam is going to show you 1 question at a time. So you can answer, move to the next one, and then go back and review. All of that is okay. Exactly 5:45, your exam closed. No exceptions. That time, automatically the exam is submitted. If for any reason you start your exam late, like for any reason you connect until 4:40, or even if you connect at 5, your exam is going to close 5:45. You think about you're in the classroom and 5:45, the bell and the professor take the exam. That is the same thing with the online. So please, next week, during the lecture time, no Zoom meeting, but you have an exam. And if you are out of the state, if you are not in Arizona time, please put in your schedule this Arizona time. You have 1 week to figure out which is the hour in your particular place and put that you have an exam that moment. Hopefully it's not midnight or in a crazy hour during the night, but if that is the case, it's only 2 times during the semester, so I think you can do it. As I mentioned before, closed book, so nothing open. Please, very careful with this. It's like a quiz, but the quizzes, during the quizzes, you can use material. For the exams, you cannot use anything. So careful with this, particularly careful with your cellular phones. There are people recorded with the phone on the screen. You should not be taking pictures of the questions, or you should not be checking in your phone anything. If you're recorded with your phone in your hands, again, it's going to be an academic integrity issue. And the big problem is that your exam is 25%. You do not want to get 0 in an exam that is 25%. And if you have any academic integrity issue, use us in the homeworks or the quizzes, the grade is 0. So please be careful. No, the previous is going to be available. It's a very good question. Let me tell you more about it. Please do not use the headphones. You do not need that. I think you need the audio, you need the microphone at the beginning. When you are doing something like this, in this part of the process, I think in some point you need audio, but not during the exam. So when you start with this, when you start with the exam, there is no reason for you to have headphones, because you do not really need to have access to the microphone. So if you need something here, the microphone in your headphones, maybe in this time could be allowed, but starting the exam, please remove nothing in your ears. Good? Regarding the interface, the main reason that I am asking you to complete the sample exam is because I want you to be sure that your computer, your system, whatever you are going to use is compatible with the lockdown browser. Check that your laptop, your tablet, whatever you are going to use, work with the lockdown browser. The second thing, and equally important, is for you to know the graphical user interface that you're going to have. As I mentioned before, it's very similar to the quizzes. I just want you to be aware, and if you want, play a little bit with this. But you're going to have one question per screen. So you're going to have the question, and you're going to have the options, assuming that it's multiple choice. You have the option to go back, and you have the option to move to the next. That is going to be there. You can do that. What some students have told me, that is comments from you guys, is something like the following. You have these back and forward options in the lower part of the screen, and it seems that you have almost in the same place, or very close, this guy. So please, I am not sure if this is exactly the graphical user interface. Something that I would like you to do is to go and check the interface. It should be the same as the quizzes, or very similar, but just go and check. The reason is, some people have told me that, Professor, I click submit, but really my intention was to click next. I do not know how far they are, one or the other, but I need to tell you, if you click submit, I cannot reopen the quiz for you. It's not like we are in the classroom and you give me your exam and then you come back and I can just search for the exam and give you your exam back. I cannot do that. You submit and your exam is automatically graded, the multiple choice questions, and the others are sent to be reviewed. I cannot reopen the exam. So if you click submit, submit. Please review the graphical user interface. Check if in your computer or your phone or your tablet or whatever you're going to use, how close these two guys are. And practice. You can take the sample exam as many times as you want, but practice or review what you need to do in order to avoid your fingers or your mouse, whatever you are using, to click the submit until you really want to submit. That is a common appeal that I receive, someone that submit the exam before time, and there is nothing that I can do. You submit, it's done. You can have the mic connected. I mean, following with the question in the chat, if you're using as a microphone your head, I think you can have those connected, but just remove from your head, so you can keep them in some place there, but it's not like you are listening to someone else. So that could be a solution. I don't know. The other option is, again, you can ask for a camera from the school, and usually the cameras have also the microphone, so that could replace the headphones if by any chance your computer do not have a microphone, environmental one. So those are the things that maybe you want to check during the week. But during the exam, nothing in your ears. That is mandatory. You are going to be flagged as suspicious because, as I mentioned before, the system is going to think that you are receiving help from someone else in your ear. Good. So the submit, check the submit, be careful to do not click that one. Other than that, you can move back and forward. Guys, you are being recorded. Obviously, your face, if you move down, up, if you are reading, it's kind of easy to notice in which part of the screen you are or what kind of thing you are checking down in the desktop or in front. Technically, you are answering an exam and hopefully your camera is in the front. So mostly of the time, the video should show you looking at the front. There is nothing in a different place. Anything could be suspicious, is going to be flagged as suspicious. But also remember, you are computer science software engineers. Every single time that you answer a question and you move to the next one, is a log file with that. And if you answer all the questions and then you stop and you do not move or go back and forward randomly, but at the end, 5 minutes before the exam finish, you go back and change all your answers, that also is flagged as suspicious. It's like, okay, you answer everything or you didn't answer anything, and then at the end, suddenly in the last minute, it's like answering everything. The system is going to put a flag, and we're going to review whether or not these answers at the end correspond to what, correct, incorrect. There is going to be a full review of that. So just be aware that even your actions are being recorded. Again, 25% of your grade, you do not want to receive a 0 because some academic integrity issue. That I have seen that before, students that receive a 0, and I have received a lot of comments about is 25%, is a lot, my grade, my GPA is going to go down. That is the reason because I insist that could happen. Please do not put yourselves in a situation in which you could receive a 0. Obviously, my recommendation is do not do anything suspicious, but even if something suspicious happens, there is usually an investigation about, well, is suspicious, but is wrong or not. Someone is going to review that. But my advice is, please, careful with academic integrity. Please study for your exam, do your best, do not cheat during the exam. Good. Okay, so that could be the environment, and that are the most important rules. At the end of the lecture, open the sample exam. You can take it as many times as you want. Open the guidelines, please review them. Next lecture, next week, I am going to show you examples of questions, and I am going to talk more about the topics. But for the weekend, please review your environment. The audio, are you listening to me? Okay, fine. Yeah, this is fine. Okay, good. So, yeah, you can have access to the previous quizzes. In fact, that is something that I highly recommend you to do. Review the previous quizzes, review if you answer wrong something, review the correct answers. If you have any question, please do not hesitate to contact me about questions, the correct answers. Send an email to the TAs. If you haven't received an answer after 24 hours, send the email again. You can copy me. I can follow up with them. They can open the quizzes for you. Good. Okay. So, other thing. Yeah, just if you do not receive, as usual, if you do not receive an answer for anything in 24 hours, 1 day and a half, you can follow up with them and you can include me in the emails and I can check what is happening. But yeah, review the quizzes. That is a very good thing that you can do to study. Now, moving forward, you're working in a project also. And the reason because you're working in a project is I think that if you start working in the project, that is going to give you hints about questions in your exam. I am going to talk more about this in the next lecture, but what you are doing with the project, I am not testing your programming skills. I know that you're good programmers. I know that you can finish this even working individually. The goal for the project is something different. You are working as a team. You can follow the process that we described before as the agile. You can really keep your team update day by day. Moreover, can you split this in different parts and using this infrastructure that we have been discussing, put the parts together again, in which each of the parts is responsibility of a different person? That is really the challenge here. That is really the thing that I want you to put in practice. For the project, this is what we are doing. You remember in the previous lecture, I was talking about 3 ideas, 3 things that I am expecting your projects to have, 3 design principles that if you apply them, they can help you with your planning for your task, and they can make the product to be complete sooner. That finally is your goal with the agile. So, separation of concerns, dependence injection, low coupling. We talked about this separation of concerns in the previous lecture. Separation of concerns, you need to think about different elements, each element's doing one thing, but also those elements connected with others with the minimum number of connection. And that is going to move to the coupling part. Dependency injection. Help me. This is easy. This is easy. What is dependency injection? How is dependency injection connected with low coupling, separation of concerns? Why is in this list? What do you do in dependency injection? What is the meaning of that in terms of programming? I have a question in the chat regarding sharing you examples of questions. That is something that I am going to do in the next lecture. That is something that I am going to do in the review. So yeah, you're going to have those. Dependency injection. What is dependency injection? Any idea? Did you know that term? One module, one class, one object that needs another one. And we're going to do an injection. Dependency injection. You do dependency injection when you, for instance, pass as a parameter an object. Passing objects in general. I have these 2 classes. And this class here need to call a method, and that method is in some class B. This class A need to call a method from the class B. Options. If this one is the class B, a novice programmer will do or worse. That is a bad idea. That is a bad idea. Why? Because the coupling, if I do that, the coupling between B and A is low or high with that composition there. Remember, that composition implies that B is a global variable. If B is a global variable in the class A, in terms of coupling, we are low or high? High. What can I do? What I can do, number one, delete that. Number one, do not have the global variable. Okay, do not have the global variable. You can have the variable local. If you have the variable local, now you do not have aggregation, you have use association. We talked about this before. That is better. That is better. Why? The coupling is a little bit lower than in the previous example. Because now instead of an object that is a global variable, now I have an object that is a local variable. In the previous example, the new is here. In this example, the new is still there, used for a local. Can I improve this? There is another option better than having a local variable in which I need to do the new? And the answer is yes. What can I do? I can do the new for B in another class, and I can send as a parameter to A this object B. Send as a parameter B instead of having the new here. That is an example of dependency injection. Dependency. A have a dependency with B. A need B. But instead of having A creating the object, doing the new, what I am going to do is to inject the dependency. Injecting the dependencies, passing as a parameter what you need to work. The advantage here is, as you mentioned in the chat, the advantage here is the creation of B is in a different place. And I can send here as a parameter a B that is a real object B, or I can send a mock object B, something that looks like a B even though it's not a B, but same family. And I am separating the functionality of the class A from this dependency that A have with B. The creation of B is not inside of A, but in a different part. And then you inject, pass as a parameter. We have three classes now, but the three of them connected with a simple arrow. Nodiamos. This guy is going to support the low coupling because this diagram is low coupling, even though there is a line there. Moreover, it's going to help a lot with the separation of concerns. In this example, I have no idea what is the work of A, but what just happened is that A is not longer responsible for creating an object. A is going to work with an object. Think about this. Imagine that A is a student, and imagine that B is a computer. And instead of having a student creating a computer with the new there, what we just did is the computer is going to be created in another place, and the computer is going to be passed as a parameter to student. So student is going to be able to work with the computer, call the method, but the computer comes from some source that I don't care where is that source. And following with the mock objects, I can send to the student a computer, a real computer, or use a box that looks like a computer, a mock thing, and see what happened. Have the student working with that object. Separation of concerns is not the concern of a student to create a laptop or to create a computer. He needed, or she needed, because he's going to call a method. But the creation is not the responsibility of the class. That is more or less the idea. Separation of concerns, injecting dependencies, keeping the coupling low. Keeping the coupling low. Usually this is all about how many connections and which type of connection do we have. If you review the class diagram and you have a small number of connections, your source code is going to be more easy to read than if you have a class diagram with a lot of connections. Not because of the connections in the diagram, but assuming that you are really implementing what you have in the diagram. More connections, more variables, if you are using aggregation composition, more methods that you're calling, whatever, more lines. Few lines, few instructions to connect things. And I am going to show you examples. It's up to you, but yes, this class C is going to pass as a parameter to A, my object B. Passing as a parameter, the dependency injection could be to the constructor, if you want that, if you need that object from the beginning, or could be pass the parameter just to the specific method that need that parameter. In your project, one example of dependency injection that you're going to implement is that object. If you start reviewing things, and if you review panels, I am sure that by now you are aware that inside of your class, that class that is extending JPanel, you can have this method paint component, and that method paint component is expecting as a parameter an object graphics. And inside of this paint component, you can use the graphics. You don't care where that object comes from, because someone is going to send that object to you. Someone is going to inject that dependency. Okay. Moreover, it's not only about that someone is going to inject the dependency. You can also inject this one, the one that you receive, into another class, into another method. In fact, something that I asked you to do is, well, inside of the method paint component that is receiving this injection, what you can do is to call this method draw or operation, and you can, what you receive, you can pass. Someone inject a dependency on you because you depend on the class graphics, and what you're going to do is to inject the same dependency to pass that object to other classes in your system. In particular, that one to the classes in place in which you are going to draw the icons to the parent of icon in which you have several different subclasses, childs, and each child can do the draw of the particular shape that you are creating. I don't know. But the point is, the class icon is going to receive as a dependency injection an object G, and therefore the class icon in your assignment could be able to draw on the screen your icon, your box with the dots and the bars. Icon do not need to worry about how to get access to the screen. It's not my problem. I am going to receive some way access to the screen because someone is going to inject that dependency on me. Well, I am mentioning here icon. My recommendation, icon should be an interface. Icon could have this method draw with the parameter G. In the interface, you do not put a body, but then you can create all these childs that are the classes that basically implement icon, and all of them have this draw method, and they need to add the body. They need to override the method, and each of the childs can draw a different icon. Remember the parentheses, the angular bracket, and so on. So my recommendation is not the only solution, but I could do icon and interface, and then override this method in the childs. Good. Okay. You are working with these guys. The only thing is I need you to be aware that you are doing that, or that you can do that, because this concern about what I am going to do to make the icons to be drawn, you need to be aware that you do not need to take care of everything in your classes. You need to trust that someone else is going to give you what you need. Examples. There are some rules that I would recommend you to follow when you develop software, when you plan for your activities, for your task. Can you help me? Who is this guy? Any idea? The name sounds familiar? Google search. Who is that guy? Someone? 70 people. I am sure that someone could tell me who is that guy. You should know him, hopefully. No? Can I put the question in the exam then? Okay, thank you. Thank you. So, stream programming. Thank you. Rules for simple design. I am asking you who is this guy, because you can identify him in terms of programming. And however, we're going to talk about design. Yeah, it's connected. A good design, a clean design is going to give you a clean product, a clean source code. Key ideas to implement these three things from a practical perspective. 4 recommendations. Recommendation number 1. Do you remember that you have your stories, and in the back of your stories, you put there the validation criteria? You put there how you are going to check for your stories to be sure that they work. One of the recommendations is whatever functionality you are implementing, think about what could be the test case. If you're working with test-driven developing, you are going to start writing the test cases first. But even if you're not working under that paradigm, it's always a good idea to think what I am going to do if I need to test this. I am doing the icons. What I am going to do when I am going to test my class. And if you're thinking like, I am going to wait for my classmate to finish, and then when he or she finish, we put everything together and we test it, that is not a good approach. What I am going to do to test my part, whatever I am doing, without waiting for the others, because the others maybe do not do anything. maybe the others fail. That means that you're going to fail also. You need to think about, this is my task, my responsibility, the thing that I choose from the backlog, what I am going to do to test it. If you're working in test driving developing, you're going to start working your test cases. Good. But if not, at least think about what are you going to need to do the testing. And you know what? When you think about testing, something that you are going to immediately notice is that it's a very good idea to have classes with simple responsibilities, because a small number of responsibilities in your class, easy to test that class. If you have a class that is doing a lot, testing of that class is going to be crazy. If you think about the testing, and when you think it's like, I am going to test my class, it's a lot of work, something is wrong, you need to split or separate concerns. Hard to test, too complex, is a bad design. Moreover, you are going to notice when you think about testing, just like before with the icons, it's like, I am doing the icons, but I need something to be able to present the icons on the screen. I need access to whatever is the object that gives me access to draw in the panel. What I am going to do, I am going to create a panel also. That means that if I am going to do the icons, I need to do also the working area. And hopefully you agree with me, no, someone else is doing the working area. My only responsibility is doing the icons. I need someone to give me access to the working area. I need someone to inject in my class a dependency that I need, the access to the graphics. Okay, later in the system, someone is going to share with me that part. But right now, I need to check that my icons are working. What I am going to do, well, a mocking object, or for the icons, I can create a panel, put that panel in some frame, and just check my icons in a panel, not in the graphical user interface with the two panels and the menu and everything else. It's just, okay, I need somehow to be sure that I have my icons. I am going to create something that is going to be my framework for testing, but these two should be connected in some way that is easy to disconnect this, the part that I am doing, because this one is going to be connected with other classes that someone else is doing. And if you think about dependency injection, what is going to happen is you have one connection that is one line, because dependency injection is calling a method. It's one line with the arrowhead, and here I can send you the access to the screen or whatever you need as an injection of the dependence. That is something that you can figure out if you think about the testing, the test cases. What do you need and who is going to provide that? Moreover, something that is going to happen automatically is you are going to be more concerned when testing about the coupling. Because again, you are going to notice that if in order to test your icons are being created inside of the panel, for instance, the coupling is too strong, you are going to notice that that one is a bad idea, because then you cannot test your icons without doing really the panel. And that really the only one that can test your part is the other guy that is doing the panel. So you are not independent. You depend to each other. And when you notice dependency with someone else in your team, it's because there is dependency also between the software, the classes that you are creating. That is correct. I'm putting a message in the chat. If you talk about icons or if you talk about options, those things are just natural language, right? Those are things that you can mention in a description, in a requirement. The technical thing is talking about JLabel or yay menu, talking about the classes in particular. But those words in the chat, those are fine. And also talking about classes, talking about methods, talking about listeners, all those things, they are technical. So you do not want to mention those classes, methods, listeners in a story description. I am assuming that the question is about that. So yeah, it's correct. Icon, option, fine. Bottom is fine. Class, method, listener, those are technicals. Yeah. Okay. If you think about testing, that could help you with the three things that we described before: dependency injection, the coupling, and indirectly, you are going to be separating concerns. Okay, number one, whatever you are doing for your project, think about it. Can you implement the testing without dependency of any of your classmates? Yes or no? And you can have an idea if your coupling, dependencies, and concerns are good. Thinking about rule number two. Ken Beck insists, please be careful with do not duplicate things. And in particular, highly recommended inheritance. If you need a class or two classes with similar things, never do copy paste into places. Create a common class or a common interface, whatever. Do not duplicate code. And I am mentioning these guys because I am going to show you something later, but you are doing icons. And I ask for 7 categories of icons or something like this. You have several different kind of icons. I am pretty sure that several of the solutions that you are going to submit, because of the time, because of several different things, new libraries that you're using, whatever, be careful to do not duplicate code. You have 7 types of icons, but all of them are going to do the same. All of them are going to appear on the screen. All of them are going to be connected. Yeah, with different connections, input and output. But whoever is working with the icons, whoever is working with the graph and the connection, please be careful with the source code and be sure that the source code that is in one method or in one class is not in any other place. But I need the same thing in 2 places. Think about what can you do if 2 places need the same. What can you do to put this code only in one place, only one time? 3, for Ken Beck. I mentioned this before, but again, at least by now, hopefully you can do a project with good names, guidelines. Do you remember that one? By now, we know about the size. Help me, how many lines of code in a method? Any idea? We mentioned this. Okay. The minimum and the maximum. 50 is a very good number, a very good average, but just to be sure, the minimum and the maximum. Methods of 1 line, good or bad? 1 method, 1 line. Okay. Hopefully the answer that I have in the chat, everyone else agree, please. I do not want to tell you, do not put method with 1 line because you're going to have setters and the setters have 1 line. So that is fine. Use your common sense. And there are going to be methods with 1 line. The setters are one example. Constructors with 1 line are another example. Maybe you have this method that calculates something and that calculation is in 1 line. That could happen, and that is okay. Sometimes, fine. But remember that we reviewed these methods that basically are calling another one, and that other method is the one doing the work. like a constructor calling an init method, use your common sense and do not have methods calling another method in one line. You can just transform in one. So again, it's more about your common sense. Maximum number of lines in a method. Exactly. I make the comment before the chat, but exactly what I was describing, the getters and the listeners. Common sense, guys. Maximum number of lines. I am going to talk about the pattern immediately after, but just to be sure, maximum number of lines in a method. Use a recommendation, not a hard number, but worst case scenario, how many lines in a method? Okay. Good. Remember, there is not a magic number. Usually the idea is worst case scenario, your method can be printed in 2 pages. 2 pages, tricky situation, but worst case scenario, 100, 200, that is correct. But I am talking about 200 is kind of a red flag. But well, it's kind of the limit, the 200, because we're moving to the double of what I mentioned, the 2 pages. It's almost 4 pages. A good number, 50. Bad, 100. And crying, 200. Not more than that. So if you have a method and your method is 200 lines or 100 lines, probably what you need is to create helper methods. So have a method that basically call others, and then you have maybe one method calling 3 or 4 methods, and those are 50 lines or something like that. Obviously, you need to remember, keep the consistency. It's not just about the splitting the method because, okay, 50 lines split. When you split, it need to have some sense of responsibility. This is one task, 100 lines. This is another task, 20 lines. This one is another subtask, 50 lines. Okay, I have a method that need to do these 3 things, and I am going to call them. Doesn't matter that one is longer, smaller, and so on, but it's more about one task that have 200 lines can be split in subtasks, and each subtask is going to be a little bit smaller. Not a specific limit about the sizes, but again, the goal is that each task is below the 50 lines, or worst case scenario, the 100. So think about it. Now, patterns. I cannot ask you for using patterns because we haven't reviewed that in the class, and I do not know how familiar you are with that. But yes, it's a very good idea to apply the patterns. At least, hopefully, you have the background of my recommendation. If you do not have an idea of what I am talking about, observer or model view controller, the key idea is your graphical user interface should be separated from your functionalities. That is a key idea with what we describe as the model and the view. So model and view separated, and internally that separation is basically an observer pattern. The observer pattern, you have the view, you have the functionality. What is happening is the view is observing. I am going to talk a little bit about the meaning of observing, but it's observing the functionality in order to put something on the screen. Patterns is a very good idea to help you to connect different parts that different developers are going to be doing. However, the only way to apply patterns is if the team, the people that is working with you, is aware about the patterns and understand what is the meaning of model view controller or observer. If you do not have a team with knowledge about this, it's just useless. If only you know what you are doing and the others do not know the counterpart, you are not going to be able to apply them. There is no problem with that. Very good question. 2 things. If you are working with Java, in particular, any version above the 9, or the version 9, you're going to receive this message about observer and observable from the Java util being depreciated. Why they are depreciated? Those classes in particular, because multi-threading. Java 9, the new implementation of everything, is moving forward to support, important support for concurrent programming. Everything can work, should work, doesn't matter if you are running a program with only one thread or you're working in an environment with multiple threads. That is important. In particular, the implementation of observer and observable in the Java util class, do not consider that. In fact, the original pattern is for single thread processes. What's happening if you implement that or if you use that in a concurrent environment? Problems. So if you're doing a program like the one that you are doing as a homework, we are not really doing anything with multi-threading. I mean, we have two threads for the graphical user interface and for something else. The Java util pattern, the Java util observer and observable can work perfectly. But if you are concerned about the multi-threading, if you really feel bad when you receive this depreciated thing, the recommendation is the other implementation of the observer pattern that is inside of the Java API is this property change listener. Yeah, the listener, in particular, that one. You can imagine the meaning. Property change is property like attribute, and change like a value, an attribute in a particular class change, and listener is the way that Java implement observers. So if you do not want to receive complaints about depreciation, you can use the property change listener. It's the same philosophy, it's the same observer pattern, but with a better implementation. Makes sense? Yeah. So similar idea. The point is separate your graphical user interface from your functionality. Please, for your project, what I am talking about is you have this network. You should have a data structure graph, that data structure that you described to me with nodes and edge. You need a data structure like this. You need to research about this data structure and the implementation of this data structure. You're going to need the traversal of the data structure, and it's all about something that already exists there. And a different thing is all the graphical user interface that you need to create. All the different ways in which you need to draw these nodes according with a particular type, or drawing the connections. When you are doing your program and splitting your task, please, someone, one programmer should be working with this problem, this project, from the point of view of the data structure and what is going to happen with the data and how you are going to handle the data, the connection, the nodes, the position of the nodes in the screen. And someone else can deal with drawing those things on the screen. And you can imagine here, there is going to be a dependency. The graphical user interface needs the data, but the graphical user interface do not have the data. Two different people, two different classes or group of classes, and then connect them. A very good way to connect them, the observer pattern. Oh, the property listener. This is my data. This is my observable. These are the properties. This guy is the observer or the listener for whatever happened in the data. If you can review any of those options and use the option, it's a very good practice. Try patterns. The last thing, this is Ken Beck. The minimum number of methods that you have, the better. The minimum number of classes, the better. And guys, you can be thinking like, are you telling me to have only one class with only one main method, and that is the better because it's one class with one method? No, I am not telling you that. I am telling you that if you have two options, and between two options with a good design covering all the previous rules and the good practices that you know, if you have two good options, and obviously one class with one main method is not one good option, then go for the one with the lower number of elements. Just like we described before, if I have the constructor calling an init method is one method with one line, two methods, the init and the constructor. This rule number 4 is, well, there is any reason to keep the constructor calling one line? No. Okay, put the content of the init inside of the constructor and you have, instead of two methods, one method. That is the goal of the rule number 4 from Kenbeck. Keep the things small, but it's the lowest priority and common sense. This is not about one class with one method, best option. This is after you cover everything else: low coupling, dependency injection, high cohesion, and you found yourself in a position with two good options. Select the one that have the minimum number of elements. Hopefully you can apply this to your project. I am going to talk about the source code later, but something that we're going to be checking with your project, and I am going to talk about it after your exam. Clean code, clean design, good practices. I will be checking that with you later. Obviously, the cleaning of your code increase reliability. We're going to review that. I am going to show examples of your work in my slides. So please do your best with the rules for clean coding and clean design. Do your best. And hopefully, if everything is okay, we can have some comments. If I have something that is kind of crazy wrong, well, we're going to have a lot to review. No. Something that I want you to do is, you do not need third-party tools. If you want to review specifically what you are talking about, send me an email, tell me what is the tool that you want to use, and I can give you my comments with the specific, because what I do not want you to do is to use a tool that you solve the problem. There is a lot of tools outside that basically allow you to create a graph and just put the graph on the screen. I do not want you to do that. If what you are asking me to use is some tool to draw pretty nice icons, that is a different idea. So my answer right now is no, but if you send me an email with the details, I can let you know a particular answer for the particular tool that you want to use. But a tool that solves everything, no, because what I want you to do is to solve the problem from scratch, because then we can talk about your design and your coding for this particular problem after 2 iterations with a team of 5. So the process is the important thing. That is basically what I want you to do, the process, not creating a good product, obviously, but following the process. Okay, guys, so I am going to stop here. Any question? Good. So see you next week for the review. And remember, in 1 week, your exam, please review the lockdown browser. See you next week. Thank you.